Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, leaked draft opinion from the Supreme Court shows Roe v. Wade being overturned. Joining us on the program, Khiara M. Bridges, professor at the UC Berkeley School of Law, expert on both constitutional and reproductive law, and then professor at the Santa Clara University School of Law, Michelle Oberman, on the relationship between a ban on abortion and what actually happens when that happens. Also on the program today, Ohio and Indiana primary day. Yesterday, AOC endorsed Nina Turner. And in Ohio, never-Trumper Dolan could overtake J.D. Vance. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi ratchets up the war talk. U.S. official claims Russia looking to annex parts of Ukraine. U.S. government reclassifies WNBA star Brittany Griner as wrongfully detained by Russia. They will no longer wait to see how that plays out, but will begin negotiations. Amazon labor union undaunted after election loss in the second Staten Island warehouse. Accusations against Madison Cawthorn multiply strikingly in the wake of his revelations of Republican lawmaker orgies and drug use.
Curious. Makes you think what Biden could do to the mansion if he
state, folks.
Chose.
Fed poised to raise short-term interest rate by a half a point, just the beginning, as they try and increase worker anxiety. Former NYC cop convicted of assault in his January 6th case. 3 pro-Trump congressmen refused to testify to the January 6th committee. And New York City moves into a higher COVID risk category as of yesterday, soon to be coming to a city near you. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is a pretty disturbing day on some level. Joining me for that day, and not the reason for it being disturbing, Emma Vigeland. Hello, Emma.
Hello.
Sorry, did not mean to do that.
No, it's all okay. Although, yeah, I mean, I will. I'm feeling better this morning because I had the opportunity to sleep on it. But that was one of those moments last night where you see the news, and we knew this was coming, right? But to have it actually happen, it was my heart was in my throat for a good part of last night.
And we're going to talk about this to some degree. I don't know what particular insights maybe our guests may have to this, but there is a question as to whom leaked this. The idea of a leak is not completely unprecedented, but a full brief, or I should say opinion or draft opinion, leaking this far in advance from when the court was going to be public on it is unprecedented. And Well, here was the first reaction that we saw, at least in terms of protesters. This is out in front of the Supreme Court last night after this leak showed up in Politico. And not to be unexpected response, right? I mean, if someone said to me there was a leaked draft coming out saying that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned, what's going to happen at the Supreme Court? You're going to get a bunch of protesters there. And the reason why I'm bringing this is because there's going to be a lot made about the leak. And certainly the right wing now has already begun to frame it as if it was leaked by some member of the court that is on the center left, if you will. Here is Mitch McConnell going right. And look, this happened like that.
Oh, yeah. Last night, I was checking out some right-wing media. Ari Fleischer immediately saying this was an insurrection, and maybe we'll get to this, from the left, whoever this leaker was. Like, they coalesce behind this anti-leaker talking point because they're banking on the fact that the media is so obsessed with norms and process that they'll run with it as well and make it a debate not about the theocracy that the right is trying to impose in this country, but about if it's right, whether or not this should have been leaked.
And it's also, I mean, look, the bottom line is it shouldn't have been leaked. It's not appropriate.
I don't. Why? What do you mean?
It's just not appropriate. I mean, like it would not be appropriate for you guys to leak some internal document here. You work in there. You shouldn't do it. It's not like national security. It's not like there's no whistleblower situation here. It's not appropriate to leak. But the idea that it was necessarily a left, wing or liberal leak, I think is one that we should make sure that we question. There's no doubt they're using the question of the leak to distract.
I think this is incredibly newsworthy and important to leak.
Well,
I mean, it depends on the motivations of the person. Again, now we're having the conversation about the leak, but like,
let's play McConnell's here because this is the accusation here.
And now, last night, a shocking new breach. Somebody, likely somebody inside the court itself, leaked a confidential internal draft to the press, almost certainly in an effort to stir up an inappropriate pressure campaign to sway an outcome. The radical left immediately rallied around the toxic stunt. The cheerleaders for partisan court packing applauded what they suggested was the work of, quote, a brave clerk, making a last-ditch Hail Mary attempt to cause a political firestorm and cause the court to reconsider. Liberals want to rip the blindfold off Lady Justice. They want to override impartiality with intimidation. They want to elevate mob rule over the rule of law.
They want to force Lady Justice to carry a baby to term. They want to force her pregnancy. Look, I don't think there's that much value in arguing whether it's appropriate or not for a clerk to leak draft opinions.
I mean, I think that it all rests on your respect for the institution of the Supreme Court, which I don't respect.
No, I don't have any respect for the institution of the Supreme Court, but the bottom line is you're going to take a job there. Presumably you do. And if you're going to work there, it's not appropriate. You got to let the process play out. But that's irrelevant. Honestly, at the end of the day, the appropriateness of it is irrelevant. Obviously, if they find out who it is, they're going to fire him. I don't think there is any type of law against leaking there any more than there would be here. But But what we do here is not going to affect half the population. Every single ruling that they do will have great impact in society, and the court would not function if every opinion was leaked. And so it can't be appropriate. I mean, who gets to choose which one is or is not? But again, I don't think that's the real story here. I think the real story is who leaked it and why. And it is far more likely, since just as a sheer numbers game, that you have far more right-wing clerks on that court with a 6-3 breakdown than you would left-leaning. So just as a sheer math question, the presumption should be it comes from the people either in the supposedly five people voting to overturn Roe v. Wade, the sixth, Chief Justice John Roberts, claiming that he would have ruled in favor of Mississippi, but not overturned Roe v. Wade, which seems to me to be an oxymoron. But why would someone leak this? One of the reasons could be what McConnell says, to create pressure on the court, which is highly unlikely. It's not like anybody voting to overturn Roe v. Wade would be like, I'm really shocked that this is a big deal with people. Of course there's going to be protests. My 14-year-old, my 16-year-old daughter could have anticipated that. What is more likely is that either there were members of that five that might have been on shaky grounds, and this was an attempt to make it look like they were buckling to pressure if they changed their vote, or they are already anticipating, this thing's written in February, it's 3 months later, they're anticipating a slightly less aggressive Alito ruling, and they want to set the parameters of what's happening. They want to be able to say, like, it's not as bad as you thought when they came out, because that's been the game the Republicans have been playing with restriction of abortion the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the motivations behind the leaker, but I think that there is a case to be made that they wanted to, or at the very least, the outcome was that the information, or the way that Alito was writing this opinion, was filled with citing Clarence Thomas dissents in which he claimed that abortion was a eugenics project against black people. Other extremist positions that included right for gay people to get married. It was both a thumb in the, or what do you call it? What's the phrase? But it was both a repudiation, thumb in the eye of right, there we go. It's about thumb in the face. That's not it. Of Planned Parenthood v. Casey and Roe v. Wade, etc. So perhaps the leaker was trying to show that, no, they're not just going to try to tweak this. They're going for these privacy protections under the 14th Amendment very broadly. And John Roberts, Kavanaugh reportedly wanted to be a bit more diplomatic in their approach. I don't know. But I do know that there are throughout like the 20th century and recently, there are a lot of brave leakers who have revealed injustices within our institutions. And the fact that this is the first time that it's happening on the Supreme Court goes to show how politicized this institution is and how it should be seen as in the same vein as leaks that come out of the
all I can say is I hope you maintain that. I mean, the value of coming out and saying that it's okay to leak that is that when it turns out to have been a conservative who leaked it, who did it because strategically it made more sense for them, you're now on record saying it's okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, personally, like.
But what does this do? I mean, what precedent does this set that you're so worried about? I'm
not worried about the precedent being set. I just think that, like, it doesn't in any way, the leak is in no way helpful to fighting this. The bottom line is this was going to happen. The idea that we know about it now or then, in terms of like the impact of the citizenry to do anything about it is nil. And I don't know if it was leaked because this is going to diminish its power in the run-up to the 2022 election. If that was the thinking, which it might dissipate over the course of 5 months, 6 months, as opposed to it coming out in June. It might lock in those. And so in the main, do I think that draft opinions of the Supreme Court should be leaked? No. I mean, do I feel strongly about it? I don't care. It's really more about like, why did someone do this? And what are the political implications going to be? And what are the implications on the ruling going to be? And so,
whatever the case is, there are going to be countless women, millions of women, particularly in red states, particularly non-white women, particularly poor women, who are going to be affected by this in more ways than we can ever imagine. Abortion will still be sought, but death, harm caused to the woman is going to increase 100%, and there are in between 13 and 26 states at the ready right now to ban abortion in this country, and it's going to happen as soon as this is official. So just be ready for that, because this is a scary time, obviously. And Michelle Oberman will walk us through the implications of that. We got some sponsors, and then we will be talking to Khiara Bridges. Great ads today. There's no easy transition.
No, there is no way to easily transition to this. It helps you sleep, I guess, a little bit. A while back we had another sponsor for betting, and a longtime sponsor. I appreciated their product, but we had some problems with the way that they were producing these things. So for a while, I've been searching around for better betting, and we found it. Cozy Earth, the softest, most luxurious, and for me, the best temperature regulating sheets. That's the key. They are made from super soft viscose from bamboo. I don't know what viscose is, but it's bamboo. And so they're far more sustainable. They breathe, so you sleep at night at the perfect temperature all year round. They have thousands of 5-star reviews. They have become the bedding of choice for apparently like interior designers.
Well, did I tell you I got the comforter? It just came in the mail.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I got the duvet for Mila.
The duvet, yeah. I got that.
The duvet or the comforter?
Isn't that the same thing?
No.
Okay.
The duvet is the comforter cover.
Okay, well, right. I got both.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't put it on my bed yet. I'm waiting until it gets like a little bit warmer, but I'm excited about it because it felt amazing. I'm also going to, I think, get Mila they have bathrobe there, but Cozy Earth offers a 100-night sleep trial, which means you have up to 100 nights to sleep on it. You wash it, you try it out. If you're not completely in love with it, you just send it back for a full refund. There's a 10-year warranty, and Cozy Earth sheets come in 4 new colors. Check it out. For me, they're soft, but the best part is that the temperature is regulating because I get too hot when I sleep. For a limited time, you can save 35% off Cozy Earth bedding. 35%. Go to CozyEarth.com/majority. Enter my special promo code majority at checkout. Save 35% now. That's CozyEarth.com/majority. Be sure to enter majority at checkout for 35% off. And of course, on a day like today, we have high-speed internet. We got celebrities going to space. We got electric cars. However, our technology for cleaning ourselves after going to the bathroom has remained the same. This is, it's Emma's favorite dads. Mm-hmm. Step into the 21st century. Upgrade your bathroom routine. Start washing your bum with Hello Tushy bidets. Hello Tushy bidet attachment washes your bum, obviously, with a fresh water. It's a way better clean. Simply spray, pat dry, attaches to your existing toilet. No electrician or plumber needed. It's super easy. If you can change a toilet seat, you can do this. It takes about 8 minutes. Cuts down on your toilet paper use by 80%. It will change the way you see your life. Hello Tushy has cleaned over 1 million happy bums. I want all of our listeners to have clean bums, of course. Of course.
Visit HelloTushy.com/majority. Get 10% off plus free shipping right now. It's HelloTushy.com/majority for 10% off. And tag Hello Tushy on social media so they can celebrate your clean bum with you. Great.
Sam's against leaks in more ways than one.
Wow. All right. Touche.
There we go.
Tushy. All right. Let's take a quick. We got. All right. I want to welcome to the program Khiara Bridges. She is a constitutional and reproductive law expert and law professor at the UC Berkeley School of Law and was a signer of the amicus brief for the Dobbs case, the Mississippi case that this brief was written about. Professor Bridges, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Slight correction, I wrote the brief.
We have been having a little bit of audio trouble. Give us 1 second.
Okay.
There you go. We got you.
Okay,
welcome
you got
to the
me?
program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, I not only signed that brief, I wrote it. So
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I know it inside and out.
Apologies.
Oh gosh, no worries.
All right. So just give us. This is a weird situation, isn't it? Because we don't really know how the court has ruled on this. Will you tell people what it is that was leaked? John Roberts has now confirmed it is legit. So that question has been tabled. Will you tell us what it is that we are reading? It's 60 some odd pages.
Yeah, no. So it appears to be the opinion of the court. So this would be the majority opinion that would be handed down sometime this summer. Usually the court opinions are handed down in the summer, so like June or July. But this opinion has not yet received responses from the other justices. So this is kind of Alito going ham by himself in his office, writing up what he would like to be the majority opinion. After this opinion, it has been written, it's circulated amongst the other justices, the ones who would join the opinion as well as the ones who would dissent. And then they would receive comments from the justices, both, the ones who would join as well as the ones who would dissent, as well as the ones who would write concurrences. And the opinion would be edited in light of those responses. So this is really kind of a good indication of what the final opinion will be in June or July, whenever it's issued. But I think it's important to say that in the past, when these majority opinions or these draft opinions have circulated, sometimes we have defectors. So some justices who might have signed on to the majority opinion initially would think, that's not the logic that I would have used, or I actually just disagree entirely. I actually think that the case should go the other way. So in the past, there have been defectors, and the majority opinion, the majority draft opinion, ended up being the dissenting opinion. So this leak, it could ultimately not be the majority opinion, but it's likely that it would be. I think it's very unlikely that Kavanaugh, Barrett, Thomas, the usual suspects would fail to join this.
Well, I mean, there's a chance that it's functionally the same, right? But with maybe some of Alito's language watered down a bit. From my understanding, he went off a little bit on liberals on past decisions. It was a cantankerous and aggressive opinion here. So perhaps someone like Kavanaugh, who's reportedly a bit more concerned with the PR blowback, might want to tweak it a bit in terms of the touch, but functionally the result could be the same. It's likely to be the same.
Yeah, I think that's a great word, cantankerous, to describe Alito. Yeah, and it might be softened, right? But the result is the same. We should expect the same result come June, which is overturning Roe. It might, as a race scholar, I noticed that Alito threw in some things about abortion being a technique of Black genocide. Had to throw that in there. So those things might ultimately, hit the cutting room floor. But it's likely that the result will be the same, which is a decision to overturn Roe.
I don't want to spend too much time on this because I would rather get your take on some of those elements that's in his opinion, because and give us a sense of where the court's going to go, what the signals. But why do you have a sense of why someone would leak this?
Because up is down and right is left. The world is we're living in a brand new world, right? Never in the history of the court am I aware that an opinion was leaked. So it's just that the norms that are surrounding these institutions just have corroded. It's just an incredible norm of secrecy around the Supreme Court, around the decisions, around their logic. And so that is what the most powerful indication that I received is that our norms are corrupting. But the motivation for it, is this. I think that there might be some truth to the claim that this is an attempt by those who want to see Roe overturned to stop any defectors from defecting, right? This is kind of like a way to get public, just to know where the court is headed. And so if, let's say, both Roberts and Kavanaugh decided, you know what, I actually want to keep Roe at least for the next 10 to 15 years or something like that. The public now knows that at some point they were both on board, or one of them was on board. I've also, I think there might be some truth to the claim that this opinion was leaked in order to soften the blow of what is to come, in the summer. Everybody's reporting it now, right? Everybody knows where the Supreme Court is headed. We knew before, right. But we know with certainty where the Supreme Court is headed. And so when the decision is actually handed down in June or July at some point this summer, all of our expectations, we know what to expect. And so it'll be less of a perhaps a political blow, a social blow. I think both of those possibilities are true.
And just to be clear, if Alito had been assigned this
mm-hmm.
and wrote it in February,
mm-hmm.
that means that basically at that time, Roe v. Wade is overturned. And the only thing that could happen, for all intent, the only thing that could happen between that time and June is
mm-hmm.
defectors, right? You're not going to have I've been sitting with this. Sonia Sotomayor is not going to be sitting there going, I've been sitting with this. I'm going to join the majority here.
Right.
I mean, It's like the only reason why you would want to do this is to lock in this result right now. And then maybe the ancillary benefit of, like you say, down the road, it softens the blow because now it's an old story by the time we get to June or July.
Right, absolutely. I don't know what Sotomayor's texting game is like, but she might be texting, Barrett, and she might be texting Kavanaugh, trying to get them to, see the light and come to what is currently the dissent. But that's highly unlikely, right? Way back in February, there were at least 5 votes, probably 6, but at least 5 votes to overturn Roe. And so this would be a sort of manifesto of the thinking at the time, at least Alito's version of the thinking.
Let's assume that the ruling stays more or less within the confines of what Alito has written. It may be softened at certain points, like you say. He may not be bringing up theories about eugenics as being the controlling reason why we have a legal abortion. What sticks out for you in terms of the reasoning that you find most problematic, egregious, or problematic going forward, egregious in terms of the reasoning?
I get hives. They break out on my body when I read originalist opinions. And so originalist opinions in the sense of, let's try to figure out what they were thinking back in 1787 or 1789. I get hives because I think it's a very silly exercise. Because most of the members of the body politic that we consider members of society just weren't at the table. They weren't thought of. They were, actually excluded formally. So people of color weren't part of the bargaining. They weren't part of negotiations. Women, people with the capacity of pregnancy, they weren't part of the negotiations. And that's just sex and gender. Like, we can also talk about class. Like, unproperty people were not part of the body politic. They weren't valued members of society. And so when we go back to try to figure out what they were thinking in 1787, they weren't thinking of those classes of people. So the Constitution at that point just looks like a document designed to protect the interests of propertied cis white males. And so, yeah, sure, of course, they didn't care about the abortion right. They could care less about, people's ability to control whether they become pregnant and whether they carry a pregnancy to term. So the most egregious aspect of the opinion to me is this this normalization of trying to of this originalist technique of interpreting the Constitution. It is not normal. It is abnormal to interpret the demands of today's Constitution in light of what a whole bunch of property cis white men wanted at the turn of the 18th century.
Yeah, and isn't inherent in this like originalist philosophy that you're also not supposed to be an activist, that you're supposed to defer to precedent? And according to this opinion, this is as activist as it gets.
Yeah, so the theory is really just politics kind of masquerading as, serious legal thought. So the theory has come up with an approach to precedent that allows it to discard precedents that are egregiously wrong, right? So Justice Thomas has been writing in, concurrences and dissents for as long as he's been on the court, kind of creating this body of doctrine that has not been precedential at all, but he's been thinking about it out loud, in which it's consistent with originalism to discard precedents that are egregiously wrong, to discard precedents that do not align with the original meaning of the Constitution. So again, the legal theory is just politics dressed up as serious legal thought.
And the way that Alito articulates this is he talks about the idea that it is wrong to believe that the Constitution has unenumerated rights. That is, rights that are not specifically laid out in the Constitution, but that are derived from principles about the Constitution.
Right.
Right of privacy allows you to have, a relationship with your doctor where your doctor provides, contraceptive,
right.
That type of thing. And he goes through and he says, unless they are deeply rooted in American society, and as you say, they could have only been deeply rooted if they were really important to property owners, slave owners, frankly, in
right.
some instances, white men, and those are the only ones that are essentially, he's given away the game here a little bit, right? He's basically saying, we set this society up for a certain group of people to win. And we're going to abide by that. And that's basically it. And I don't ask this, obviously, I don't want this to be seen as diminishing the implications of this, because I think the implications of this are going to be huge, obviously.
Right.
But there's two parts to this ruling, right? There is the implications for abortion rights, and then a whole host of other rights.
Yeah.
What are implicated in that second sort of tranche?
Yeah, so Alito casts skepticism, upon all unenumerated rights, and specifically substantive due process rights, and those are the rights that we have derived from the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. So long history. I won't, we only have, we don't have that much time, so I won't give you the history, but this goes back to the 1900s, where the Supreme Court was interpreting the Due Process Clause to protect rights, rights to privacy, rights to control the education of your children, right? Rights to custody of your children, rights to access contraception in the 1960s, rights of unmarried people to access contraception. So what Alito is saying is that all those decisions dating back to the 1900s, illegitimate, right? So that means that those rights are vulnerable now. They're threatened. And there's nothing that would stop the Supreme Court from holding that this, Meyer versus Nebraska, this old case that said that you have a right to send your child to a school of your choice to get your child educated in the way that you want your child to be educated, that is a protected constitutional right. There's nothing that stops the Supreme Court from saying, well, that's substantive due process. That's trash. But looking forward, specifically in the 2000s, right, we started seeing the court use that same due process clause to protect the rights of LGBTQ people. So Lawrence versus Texas, which held that it was unconstitutional for Texas to criminalize, quote unquote, same-sex sodomy, that opinion relied on substantive due process. And so when Alito says these unenumerated rights, they're made up, they're trash, they don't really exist, Lawrence v. Texas stands in the crosshairs. It means that it would open the door for Texas and any other, state to criminalize same-sex conduct, same-sex sexual activity. And then, of course, Obergefell versus Hodges built on Lawrence versus Texas. Obergefell versus Hodges being the Supreme Court case that held that the Constitution is properly interpreted to protect the ability of a person to marry another person of the same sex. So same-sex marriage equality, that stands in the crosshairs as well. So abortion, Roe v. Wade is just the beginning. The Supreme Court, I think it's important for people to understand that the Supreme Court is the judicial arm of the GOP. The Supreme Court is not an independent body. It's not apolitical at all. And so what the GOP wants, this conservative ideology, this conservative view of the country, the Supreme Court now stands prepared to sort of manifest it. And LGBTQ rights are likely the next to go. But I think it's important to recognize that all sort of reproductive liberties around accessing contraception, having children, not being coercively sterilized, those things are equally vulnerable from a constitutional standpoint.
But the fact that that Alito's opinion explicitly targets Lawrence v. Texas, or at least alludes to it in a very specific manner, it's kind of a bat signal for Republican legislators around the country, because look, we gave you runway to implement all of these very restrictive abortion laws, and now we are rewarding you. We are rewarding you with this opinion. And Absolutely. Here embedded in my opinion, I'm giving you the damn roadmap to do this next. And this is the easiest way to get what you want. I mean, they're telling them in this opinion, do this next.
Right. Absolutely. It's kind of like back in September, actually, when the Supreme Court allowed Texas SB 8 to go into effect. It was kind of just like, I see what you did there. Go ahead, keep doing it. We're not actually going to stop you. And so Texas is like, cool, we'll just, make sure that nobody gets abortions in the state past 6 weeks indefinitely. And then all these other states, followed the lead. And so, Kentucky passed restrictive abortion legislation. Everybody's queuing up, having read the clear signs from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's not going to stop anti-abortion legislation, not going to stop anti-abortion restrictions, or rather abortion restrictions. And so the signal, it takes a lot to not see the signs in Alito's draft opinion that he's opening the door to, focus next on Lawrence versus Texas, right. Focus next on Obergefell. He's making it very plain that he doesn't believe that those decisions were correctly decided. The justices that sign on to Alito's opinion will be indicating that they don't think that those decisions were correctly decided, were correct interpretations of the Constitution. And so now it's an invitation for red states to, see what you can do, right? Like maybe stop issuing marriage licenses, maybe stop allowing LGBTQ families to adopt. Maybe, let's just, let's play with it a little bit, see how far you can get before you get a decision in which the Supreme Court overturns it entirely.
So on that day in June or possibly early July, when this decision is announced, it may not be Alito's brief as we've read it today, but it is almost certainly going to be a 5-4 decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. 26 states, is my understanding, essentially in that moment will have a ban on abortion. There may be some slight variation between those bans, but basically abortion is done. Connecticut just passed a law, it's about to be signed, I think, by Lamont, that was aimed at protecting people who left, let's say, for instance, state of Texas and going to Connecticut, so they could countersue and get back all the money that they would lose if they were sued by out of Texas, and it protects them. But I have two questions, and these are the two final questions. One, can a Connecticut create a law that would inhibit Texas' ability to have their law follow that Texas citizen to Connecticut to get an abortion, let's say? A, and B, what can a state do? We haven't really contemplated this, but this is something to contemplate. In 2024, even if the Democrats hold the Senate in 2022, the odds are against them in 2024. The House is probably going to be gone by 2024. It's not impossible to imagine that Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or whomever it is going to be president. When the Republicans get all three branches of government, they could pass a federal ban on abortion. Is there anything the states can do in that instance?
No. Well, I have to think more about it, but So what you are suggesting is absolutely likely, and the Democrats should have been planning for this possibility. I think that for so long we have been sort of leaning on the existence of Roe v. Wade, right? We had been just assuming. I mean, Supreme Court justice confirmations have been around. Whether a justice would or would not vote to uphold Roe v. Wade. So for so long, we have been relying on the Supreme Court's decision and abortion being protected as a constitutional right. With the demise of Roe in the summer, in a month or so, it now leaves the political branches open to do what they do. And I think that we are fools to believe that the next step in the abortion fight is not, or the next goal for Republicans when it comes to abortion is not a federal statute banning abortion in the U.S. entirely, right? If you believe that the fetus is a life, you're not satisfied with a life being protected in Texas but killed in California. If you believe that abortion is murder, you shouldn't stop until this murder isn't happening all over the country. And so that's what a federal law, a federal piece of legislation would be to prescribe abortion across the country. At that point, what could states do? I think it's states could do very little, like when you're facing a federal ban on abortion. Just like but I think it takes creativity to respond to something like that, right? So since 1973, we've had federal license to get an abortion, and so anti-abortion folks have had to operate within the constraints of that law. And I gotta say, they did it quite creatively and ingenious, and they did a great job since 1973 in whittling down the abortion right to where it stands today, which is not very good. And now this not very protective right that we have is about to be overturned. So I think that folks who support abortion rights have to be just as creative as anti-abortion folks have been since 1970. They were operating under a federal regime that they didn't like. They did a great job to make abortion inaccessible. So we may be operating under a federal regime that we don't like, and we're going to have to act creatively to make abortion accessible to those who need it.
Khiara Bridges, law professor at UC Berkeley School of Law. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break, and our next guest is going to talk directly to that. What happens when a state ban or a federal ban on abortion happens in this country? What's it going to look like on the ground? We'll be right back when we talk to Michelle Oberman, professor at the Santa Clara University School of Law. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome to the program Michelle Oberman. She is a professor at the Santa Clara University School of Law. And Professor, thanks for joining us. We were just talking to Professor Khiara Bridges from the UC Berkeley School of Law. And we left it on the question of what happens if there's a federal ban. And your work has focused on what does happen when there are abortion bans, both in this country and in internationally, and what the implications are, the real world implications. Let me just start though, and welcome to the program. What was it like pre-Roe? I mean, I think we have this notion that it was, I mean, like what was that dynamic?
Yeah. I mean, it's a funny thing to have our set point be what life was like more than 50 years ago, right? But it's worth noticing that at every point in history, folks who have money have been able to pretty safely end their abortions. So folks with money in the years prior to Roe would find either access by flying to jurisdictions where abortion was legal or more readily accessible. So you had wealthy women flying to Europe, or could, but because they knew their doctors and they had better access to them, could find a doctor who could safely end their pregnancies here. The thing that's changed and changed dramatically in the past 50 years, and that you see really throughout the world, even in the poorest countries in the world, is that the availability of a safe, affordable, and effective means of ending a pregnancy in the form of abortion medicine has just completely changed the risks for the rest of us, right? So in a country like El Salvador, where the majority of the population lives on less than $5 a day, wealthy women can still get on a plane and fly to New York or Miami for a surgical abortion. But the vast majority of folks are ending unwanted pregnancies by accessing, just through a cell phone, a market in abortion medicine.
And so
and getting an abortion pill, just to clarify, I think you cut out a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, we haven't really thought through what comes next in this country, but in countries all over the world, folks with cell phones and a debit card are able to access a market in illegal abortion medicines, and provided that they have the guidance to know that it's the right drug, they're taking it at the right time, and they've got the right dose, they're safely ending their pregnancies. It's like 92 to 98% effective.
Okay, and so I read over a paper you wrote, what will and won't happen when abortion is banned in this country, and you looked at basically three assumptions about how bans work. That a ban will actually be effective in deterring abortion, that it will send a message about abortion and sort of, I guess, change the cultural narrative around it. And third, that these bans will be enforced by everyone. And the reason why I wanted to ask about pre-1973, because I feel like, well, first off, is there any precedent for a ban on abortion to return, particularly after several generations? I mean, it's one thing, like, we've overturned a ban on abortion and then 2 years later it was reinstated or something. But this has now been, like, I think that the impact of this is mitigated on some level because people can't really conceive of abortion being outright banned, and it can be, but is there a precedent for a ban to return like this?
No, there isn't. And as you're suggesting, the world has really changed in the past 50 years. And, in many ways, some of the most important of those changes are changes that involve the status of women in civil society, right? I mean, prior to Roe, women seldom had credit cards, didn't necessarily hold credit cards or have access to their own cash. We didn't fly on airplanes, right? It was very expensive to travel across state lines. We weren't well represented in the academy, in the legal profession, in the medical profession, right? So much has changed. to my mind, what I find helpful when I wonder how you can actually go from something that's legal and that's widely available and used to something that is now illegal, I actually think a lot about prohibition and what happened in this country when we took alcohol and made it, suddenly like this thing that everybody's able to do is now illegal. And what we learned from that history is that in the immediate aftermath of prohibition, there was this moment of like the market freezing up. How are we going to access alcohol? But you have to pay attention to the demand side of a market to understand what happens next, which is when there's a demand for alcohol, then pretty quickly the market adjusts and people figure out how they're going to get alcohol. And so ultimately it became a joke, a very unpopular law and a bit of a joke, and the market responded. And my gut is that we're going to see the same thing here. And it's not just my gut. I mean, unless we think, wow, they figured it out in El Salvador and they figured it out in Brazil, but in the United States, we're not going to have a market in illegal abortion. Like, unless we think that's true, then the only real question for folks on both sides is what's that illegal market going to look like?
Well, the fact that it's a market, right, I think that raises a whole bunch of questions, because it's healthcare. But in this country, we've decided that healthcare is a commodity or something that, you need to, that is privatized. So different, road to go down there. But I just was hoping that you could expand on the fact that even with abortion being legal, restricted in red states, but legal in this country, it's so difficult for poor and particularly non-white women in this country to access abortion. Now it's going to be a whole another set of hurdles as you lay out, although this is a very different landscape, as you also say. But I don't know if people are fully understanding of all of these obstacles that poor women face, one, in accessing contraception, and then also accessing abortion that leads to this disproportionately affecting them. Do you mind laying that out for the audience?
Yeah, I love your question. I'm glad you raised it. I feel like it is, to my mind, immoral to talk about abortion without talking about class and race in America. And the reason why it's immoral is because these bans will differentially impact the poorest among us, and the poorest among us are disproportionately Black and brown women, right? And let's just be clear about that. Right. Let's talk about what kind of access they have to healthcare and to contraception, which are the things that actually are associated with lower abortion rates. Access to contraception is actually associated with lower abortion rates. So I think that for folks who are hoping that the bans will deter abortion, what they are actually hoping is the same thing that they were hoping back in 1976 when Congress, in response to Roe, passed a law that said you could restrict Medicaid funding of abortions. And so from the very beginning, we've taken poor women and their access to abortion and made the right an abstraction, right? If you don't have the money, you don't actually have access to abortion. So to sort of loop all the way back to, okay, like what happens next? I think what happens on the ground in red states is that folks who have the money or the education will figure out how to get online and access the drugs that they need to end an unwanted pregnancy, or where to go in their car, or how to get a bus or a plane to get themselves to a state where they can have a legal surgical abortion. The folks who are most likely to be impacted or deterred by abortion are those who are struggling to navigate on a day-to-day basis their lives already with a child, right? 60% of abortions go to folks who already have a child, with perhaps a minimum wage job, living on around $14,000 a year. The federal poverty line, right, is like $14,000 a year, and half of abortions go to people living below that. Right? So we're talking about that population figuring out how to access an abortion, whether it's through medicine or through travel. And it just feels to me like those are the folks that are going to have the biggest struggle. And when they struggle and when they are forced to continue their pregnancies, what we're going to see is an increase in child poverty in this country.
Right. Do you think that because that the enforcement mechanisms and the incentive structure for enforcement is going to be different than it was pre-1973? Because it occurs to me that the reinstitution of this ban is going to bring with it, particularly in the red states, but if the Republicans get control of the presidency and certainly the Senate and the House, and we get a federal ban, I think like the DOJ, the number one department they're going to have is going to be, civil rights division is going to be dedicated to going after people who infringe upon the rights of fetuses, essentially. And it sounds flippant, but I think this is actually the way it's going to work. The fervor in which they're going to go for prosecutions, and undoubtedly it's going to be a class distinction, although maybe every now and then they'll go after, some Hollywood lib if they can, or something to that effect. But we're going to see there's an incentive structure for prosecution and enforcement that I think is going to be far more energized than it was pre-1973.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think that energy is going to be very short-lived. And here's why. When you ask a woman why she's ending a pregnancy, pretty quickly what comes into view is not sort of I really want to wear a bikini this summer, but I can't afford to have this child. The guy is long gone. I'm living on too little money. There is no paid parental leave in this country. Where am I supposed to leave my child for daycare when my minimum wage job has no flexibility? I'm 17 years old and it is too hard to access a living wage. Right. So what comes into view when you try to prosecute abortion is the struggle to figure out who's the perpetrator, right? Who's the bad guy here. And that's why these prosecutions have just never been terribly popular, whether it's in El Salvador, where they really try full scale and abortion prosecutions, or whether it's actually, I'm so sorry. Or whether it's going to be in this country. I mean, it just historically, it's never been a popular prosecution. The reason why I think we see disproportionately prosecutions going against the poorest and most marginalized in the country, we see these prosecutions already, is because prosecutors have to figure out what they think their juries will actually convict. Right, so the senator's daughter is not going to be a popular prosecution, even though in many ways that would be at least a more just prosecution than going after the poor Black woman who's living on nothing and has 3 babies.
I mean, I hope you're right about that, but I think there is a fervor that is, and they are playing to a narrow enough audience. Right? Like, I mean, that was the reason why we said you didn't hear this agenda on a national level. But then what started happening is you started having congressional districts and states that were like, there is no contrary opinion. There is nobody we can go after in this instance that's not going to feed into the narrative we have. And I wonder if that level of zealotry and the fact that it's self-sustaining, because we're not only going to have a ban on abortion, I think, federally at one point in the next 4 or 5 years, very possibly, let's put it that way. But we're also going to have minoritarian rule.
Yeah.
And so the idea that 60% of the population is not behind your virulent prosecution of people who are seeking abortion may be largely irrelevant to them maintaining political power. In fact, it may be the opposite. It's like, we just need to make sure that 40% is with us. And so there is no unpopular, prosecution of abortion in that regard. I mean, I just wonder, I mean, you're the expert. That's why I ask.
Well, I mean, none of us is expert on what comes next, right? I mean, it's hard to know what appetite prosecutors will have and what appetite the country will have. But the way I think about prosecution and full-scale enforcement against something that is this, against something like abortion that is this commonplace, that 1 in 4 of us actually has one in our lifetime, is to think about the opioid epidemic. I mean, you can't prosecute your way out of something that is so endemic. Everybody's life is touched by it. And so I think there'll be short-term bursts of enthusiasm by rogue prosecutors in small red jurisdictions, and that pretty quickly it'll catch somebody's daughter, and there'll suddenly be folks that are rabidly anti-choice, right? That are rabidly supporting the bans, having a hesitation around conviction. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I never I'm your more optimistic take than my black pill take is refreshing, but I wonder how many non-white poor women who will fall before that happens. I mean, I will never underestimate the right's ability to be cruel and demonize women and punish them for their sexuality and then criminalize poverty as well. And those two things, when it comes to this abortion issue, they're right for the picking. So
yeah, I'm 100% with you there. And I think the answer is that women who look like me need to put our bodies on the line. I mean, it just, you know, that we can't stand and sit idly and allow them to take the fall.
Yeah.
Along those lines, what from your research have you found have been the most effective mechanisms that have been deployed to fight bans, both materially insofar as like providing the access to the extent that it can be with a ban, and also politically in terms of like undercutting the existence of the ban politically?
Yeah, so I think the answer to that question comes by centering the needs of the most marginalized and vulnerable. And when you start by asking how they'll be affected, then you can actually build out a response. And I've watched this happen on the ground in El Salvador, where what they did was they centered, okay, who's actually being affected by this? And they realized, oh, wow, so there's patients in the hospital setting and doctors who are afraid. And the doctors who are afraid are reporting the patients to the police, or they're under-treating things like cancer, right? Like an ectopic pregnancy. And so they mounted a strategy to first begin to sue doctors who breached confidentiality, and secondly, to begin to articulate malpractice when doctors were, you know, under-treating cancer. So that's a small example. Bigger example was, let's look and see what's happening with the folks who are being prosecuted, and then begin to build out the cases around wrongful convictions, because those folks ended up, of course, there, as they will here, being the poorest folks in the country, poorly represented by lawyers who were incompetent, convicted by judges who were sloppy. So they put a team of lawyers on those cases, and they've had an exoneration rate that is astonishing. In the past 10 years, they've found close to 30 cases of women who've been exonerated as fully innocent and sent home from prison, right? The majority of cases of women serving sentences in El Salvador have now been exonerated. And then in terms of the most important impact, building on the ground, it's to create safe places to go when you're struggling with an unwanted pregnancy. So it's not just that you need to be able to use your phone and some money to access drugs. You need to find somebody who can tell you this is the right drug, this is the right time to take it, this is what to do when you go to the hospital. If you have, this is what's abnormal, what would cause you to have so much bleeding to go to the hospital. This is what to tell the doctor. So we need trusted advisors. They don't have to be professionals, but trusted advisors to walk us through it. Think about abortion doulas, you might call them, right? We have that movement here. It just hasn't been scaled up. But that's what we need. We need something to combat the misinformation. And I think we'll save the most vulnerable in that way. But if we're just worried about how are wealthy white women going to survive without a right, then we're really missing the import of this moment.
So it's conceivable we could see a network of these abortion doulas and people like just basically putting billboards up, across the country. Text 503 whatever it is to get more information type of situation.
Yeah, I mean, like it already exists. There already are chat lines and text lines. I think that what we need is actually a scaled up that's not just like billboards, but that is interpersonal, right? I think about like wearing a button that rather than having a coat hanger, it has pills on it, right? Like, here I am, I'm safe, ask me. And, you know, I just don't see any way around it. And I know from COVID misinformation and from this world in which we've got so much misinformation around vaccination, that it's going to be a challenge. It's not a simple problem. And that's why I think it's very interpersonal. Like, it can't just be, here's a billboard. It has to be, here am I, you trust me, and I can walk you through this.
Right. I really appreciate your insight for this. It is it's it's a horrible day, but it really is not just a day. I mean, that is the point. It is going forward. Michelle Oberman, professor at the Santa Clara University School of Law. Really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So much.
Thanks, Emma.
All right.
Fun halftime.
Yeah,
folks.
Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing too, is that like, I am quite convinced that this leak was done to, maybe both lock in votes and to certainly depreciate the strength of the pushback, because it's not like this is, remember, this is like what Bill Barr did with the Mueller report. Came out, provided a definition before the report came out, made it impossible for the report itself to be digested as it actually was, started the narrative there. If the narrative goes from, Alito's version of the 5-4 to like Kavanaugh's version of the 5-4, where it's not, that's going to be the story. I mean, I'm willing to bet at least portion of Miles. Let's do Saul's, because Saul's got more. I got more time to make
runway,
it up.
right?
Of his college fund. That what we're going to see by the New York Times and the Washington Post when the decision is revealed, that it's going to be anti-abortion 5-4, but not as harsh as it at first gleaned. But in fact, it will be as harsh.
But I don't find value in looking at. I don't think this is going to do much to dilute the opposition to Roe v. Wade getting overturned. We could pick apart the politics of like Edward Snowden and what was the motivation behind his leaking of things, and yet it is still heroic and material. I'm not saying this was heroic, but it was still very important for us to have that information. We don't know how things are going to shake out. I don't respect the institution of the court. I don't respect the norms. I don't particularly care if a liberal opinion gets out early or if a conservative one gets out early. This one is so monumental that,
Well, I guess from my perspective,
it's incredibly newsworthy.
I'm not disagreeing. Well, of course it's newsworthy, but I'm not disagreeing with, that I'm worried about the institution of the court. I mean, I think just, it's not I'm not trying to protect norms in it. I'm saying this is disadvantageous. This is a disadvantage for those who are against the 5-4 ruling. That's my point. And I mean, it remains to be seen, but that's what I'm guessing. We are going to head into the fun half of the program. We're going to welcome Nomi Konst, who might have a couple of thoughts about this.
Maybe.
Just a reminder, it is your support that helps this program survive and thrive. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the fun half, or the free half, free of commercials, you get the so-called fun half, which is on occasion fun.
Today
probably not so much.
Well, we'll see.
Maybe.
I'm trying to look at the sound sheet to see if there's literally even anything that's fun on here. There's some
we
fun
don't
stuff.
Know. But we it's always an endeavor. Also, come out, see the Boston show live. We are 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away. You don't want to miss this. We've got great music. We've got great discussion about, I imagine we're going to be talking about Roe v. Wade with Natalie Shore, and we're going to be talking to some environmental activists doing some work up in Boston. We've got a special guest. It's going to be great. And there's going to be hundreds of your fellow Majority Report listeners or watchers. So check it out. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, tomorrow on Left Reckoning, we're having Robin Wansley-Warloba on. She's an independent socialist who is a city councilor for Minnesota's Ward 2, and we're going to be talking about running electorally, being an independent socialist and not seeking the Democratic endorsement, and what she sees as her role in politics. And we'll probably talk about policing and housing as well as this abortion stuff.
All right, let's bring Nomi on so she can tell us what's happening on her program. Hi, Nomi. Great
Hello,
day.
guys. How are you? It's casual Tuesday for me today. I just couldn't really get myself motivated to do much this morning. So
That's all good.
no show this week. I'm off. But because of the news, I've seen a lot of people say, where can we give money? What can we do? There are a lot of abortion access funds that are doing amazing work. But I do want to remind people that we have red legislatures that the Democrats have abandoned in so much of this country. And Matriarch is supporting more women, probably, more women are running than ever and have been since Trump has been elected, but they've also not been receiving the resources needed. And we need to take over those legislatures. So if you are kind enough to contribute to Matriarch PAC, you can go to matriarchpac.com. We just announced 8 endorsements. We have many more rolling out. We're doing emergency calls coming up for women, all working class women, let's be very clear, progressive women running from all the way to the local level to like city council, state house, to Congress. And, because obviously listen, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second because this is dangerous territory, but the strategy's got to change. I mean, there have been so many books written about the strategy.
There is a strategy that exists now?
Oh, there is. Yeah, it's called show up at a protest, then go home and feel better.
Right.
Maybe if the Democrats, if women's groups, and maybe this is what we'll call on, is that they demand that the Democratic Party exist outside of Washington, New York, and California, so that this wouldn't happen to so many. Let's be real. I mean, it's beyond actually just poor women now. This is, if you're in any of the southern states, either you jump on a plane, which is very dangerous in some cases, or you have to drive through how many states to get abortion access. Obviously, that requires resources, but it also requires time. So this is hurting the poorest communities the most, but it is all trickling up to hit higher economic classes as well. So we've got to take over these legislatures. It's ridiculous because some of these races really don't cost that much money, and there are effing right-wing Trump QAnon supporters running to take over the legislatures now. And if we don't see that in front of us because we live in our own little bubbles, it's time to start paying attention and demanding Democrats and institutional women's organizations put pressure, because the Democrats do listen to them. So if you're funding Planned Parenthood, if you're funding Emily's List, if you're funding any of these organizations, NARAL, who are our allies, demand that they actually, open up an office in Texas or Arizona. They have offices there, but it's extremely underfunded. So we've got to start supporting women at the local level.
All right.
Doesn't Emily's List support Kyrsten Sinema? Or they left her earlier in January. I was about to be like, well, we could talk about her statement in a minute about how she's still
Let's see if Clyburn is going to his event with Cuellar.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk about all of this in the fun half. I just want to remind people, if you're watching the program live, you can go into the YouTube description and click on the link that we're going to put up right now. It's up to get to the fun half, which we are headed towards right now. So the fun half is on a different YouTube stream. Click on it. Oh, and I also just want to say, we have people watching on Twitch, and yesterday, I felt the presence of it, the energy of it, but I didn't say anything because I wasn't quite sure what was happening.
You felt the 4-tiered train.
I'm sorry, we had a level 5 hype train
sorry.
yesterday.
Choo choo.
Yeah, we had a level 5 hype train on
I don't understand
Twitch.
any of this.
Ardawen, Asian, Siri Business, and Nug Wrangler all gifted 5 subscription each. That was that brought us up to a level 5 hype train, and that's why
all aboard.
It was so nuts. I got a little nauseous, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. I thought maybe I was not fully recovered from my COVID, and then I found out it was a level 5.
Yeah,
hype
you
train.
can feel that energy anywhere.
See you in the fun half.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow, What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
No, Mickey.
You did it.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's.
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? This me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Libertarians.
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering. I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-501. 1/2.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all, my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the weak being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. Okay.
We're back.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the fun half of the program. I don't know. You want to start with Susan Collins, who is now just absolutely shocked.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? It has been, to be fair to Susan Collins, it has been so long since she voted to confirm Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett that maybe they had a really dramatic change of heart because of all the experiences that they've had over the past year.
Yeah, they had like an ayahuasca trip. They went on a retreat and they realized that now it's in our nature to restrict women's access to abortion. If we've had a personal renaissance, both of us.
Here is Susan Collins trying to, I don't know, pretend like what?
No, these
is
are old.
Is a throwback.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Susan Collins, I should say, trying to pretend a couple of years ago that Kavanaugh's not going to overturn Roe v. Wade.
I do not believe that Brett Kavanaugh will overturn.
His precedents are
Roe v.
overturned.
He noted that Roe had been reaffirmed 19 years later by Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and that it was precedent on precedent. He said it should be extremely rare that it be overturned, and it should be an example.
So you have obviously full confidence.
I do. We talked about whether he considered Roe to be settled law. He said that he agreed with what Justice Roberts said at his nomination hearing, in which he said that it was settled law. I could not vote for a judge who had demonstrated hostility to Roe v. Wade because it would indicate a lack of respect for precedent. What Judge Kavanaugh told me, and he's the first Supreme Court nominee that I've interviewed out of 6 who has told me this, is that he views precedent not just as a legal doctrine, but as rooted in our Constitution. And he reveres our Constitution. I asked him, is it sufficient if 5 current sitting justices believe that Roe should be overturned? And he said no. I would not support a nominee who demonstrated hostility to Roe v. Wade, because that would mean to me that their judicial philosophy did not include a respect for established decision.
Yeah, I mean, but to be fair, she only said that at least a dozen times.
Yeah. She's very concerned today. I think she's reached concern level.
Full concern level.
No, concern level orange. It's been upgraded from what were the terror threats that the Bush administration had, right?
Exactly. It's the COVID colors now.
Green,
yellow, orange, red.
But I remember the Bush ones were like, it was, this was an early
DEF
childhood
CON
memory that they were not like in the right order or something. But regardless, keep going.
So, I mean, I don't know. Somehow Susan Collins has sort of survived. I mean, she's not up for re-election until 2026. And who knows what happens at that point. But it's important for, I guess, for people to start to build these type of pressures, because the next question is going to be, will Susan Collins, when she is a member of the majority in 2024, let's say, maybe of the Republicans, Senate Republicans, by then we may have seen the demise of the filibuster, which they will do if they only have 55 senators, the Republicans, whether she'll vote for a ban or not, on a federal ban on abortion. But there it is. I mean,
it's such tokenism too. I mean, we say that on our side all the time when someone sells their people out, but she has to feel the pressure. I just as we need to put pressure on Kyrsten Sinema, I think that this could affect maybe other Republicans. We have to look at who's up right now that might be on the fence, saying you can't get away with this, because they're playing it so hard right now, thinking this is going to help them in the midterms with turnout. My guess is I think this might backfire, and I think you guys were talking about this earlier. This might backfire this year. If student debt relief if there's any form of relief given, if Title 42 does end, as predicted, Latinos you need in many of these states to keep the Senate and to keep Congress. You clearly need women excited, and you need young people. So that is a formula right now that if Republicans keep playing it this hard, Democrats might, by some good luck, carry through and keep whatever we have together. I think this changes everything, but it also puts her on the table and anybody else who's a moderate this election cycle in the Senate. You can use her as a weapon against the others, essentially, is what I'm saying.
Right. In other words, you're saying that you cannot believe this moderate who's saying, I don't know who's up, who fits that bill, right? I mean, who would that be? In the Senate Republican.
Honestly, if we could pull that up right now, that would be.
I mean, she just got reelected. It's hard to use her as a proxy.
Murkowski is still, I think, 2024. I mean, I that's the point, is that I'm unclear as to and I was trying to make this point with our last guest, that there's not public opinion in this situation, because of the way that our democracy is configured, may not be relevant. Right?
They're a as you said, Sam, and they're a minoritarian extremist party, and that's why they feel an urgency that the Democratic Party never does, and they act on that urgency, and they have stacked the court with activist judges. McConnell treated this like his life's work, because it is, because now we're seeing the results and the fruits of this, and they're going to come after labor, they're going to come after gay rights, they're going to come after everything else, and that's unless the Democrats can create that urgency in terms of like electoral outcomes, I don't have faith in them or for this breaking in the right way for them, because it's like, it's like in Succession where he says, I've never seen Logan get fucked once. Like, I've never seen the Democrats really not mess things up when things have been handed to them. And so, like, electorally, I don't have a ton of optimism right now.
This could have relevance maybe in the Ohio race, maybe in the Pennsylvania race, depending on who.
In Congress, honestly. There's plenty of swing districts right now. I mean, I'm not even just talking about Senate. It's not about Susan Collins herself. It's not about Lisa Murkowski or these women who are complete tokens of the Republicans right now. It is about using them as, same thing with Mitt Romney, using them as, you're not getting a low taxes Republican when you're getting the whole thing. You're getting QAnon, you're getting the Trump movement.
There's no such thing in practice as a moderate Republican because they are supporting a party, and the moderates in the party always lose. And so it doesn't matter that Susan Collins is a moderate on abortion because it went away anyways. They don't have the power within their party to steer anything. And so,
but it's also difficult for Democrats to make this case when they're in power and they're in charge of the presidency and they're in charge of Congress. Like for a regular voter, this is a really difficult case to make and to make it about the Republicans right now. I really do think so.
But historically, Democrats don't win because they put the work in. Historically, they win when the Republicans, at least in the last 40 years, overplay their hand. It's not because suddenly overnight they decide to try. They never try.
No, I know.
Oh, cool. You bought a bunch of ads. Congratulations. Great job. You ran, Obama around the country to do some rallies. It helps the little excitement. Honestly, if these three things together, student loans, Title 42, and this Supreme Court, reversal happen, this might be the coalition of energy needed in a lot of these tight districts to keep the majority. I'm not saying it's definite, but you look at the Southwest, you need that Latino support to show up to a certain percentage. They're so down to the data. They just need a certain percentage for them to turn out. They need a certain percentage of women to stay excited. And of course, the student loans would keep a certain percentage of young people together. I don't like that strategy. I think it's lazy. I think, it's compromise so you can keep all the other bad deals going. But, it could prevent the Handmaid's Tale dream from taking hold, which it has, obviously.
Matt made a good point before the move into the fun half. I'm really curious as to what Clyburn is saying these days about his going around and supporting Henry Cuellar.
How about Nancy Pelosi?
Or Pelosi, for that matter. I mean, this is, and I want to just, and I know this is not necessarily apropos of anything, but 18 years ago now, when Hillary Clinton was preparing to run in 2008, she made a tact toward the right, saying that we need to meet conservatives halfway on abortion.
Yeah.
And I raise that only because that wing of the party is ostensibly criticized or is associated with abortion being a premier right. And the idea, and I hope that we are far, far past this, the idea that you can compromise with conservatives on this in any fashion, even saying like, we need to make abortion, like rare and, accessible, but rare or whatever it is. Like, I mean, look, nobody wants to have a medical procedure. We're not go around saying like, we need to also make appendectomies rare.
Right.
Okay. It's a medical procedure.
Except for all your plastic surgery. You did that.
And except for all the plastic surgery. But the point is, it's a medical procedure. And when we fall into this trap of we want to make it rare because of the moral implications of it, we are accepting the conservative position on this. And those days are over. There is no compromise with conservatives on these fundamental questions because they are fundamentalists, period.
Well, in part, but also the country has become, let's just give them a little bit here, has become much more progressive. You have, a generation that's nearing 40 that is far more progressive. So Tim Kaine being a choice in 2016 for vice president, so somebody who has a nice guy, horrendous record on choice, horrendous. So for Hillary Clinton, because she wanted to win Virginia, how'd that work out for her, by the way? Tim Kaine, when he got elected, maybe he needed to be a little bit more conservative when it came to quote unquote family values, maybe back then. But this is not the country that we're looking at today. You look at the polls, you look at the crosstabs, people support abortion access. And part of this is also because the Republicans have gone too far, because they're not willing to compromise and they've overplayed their hands, that people realize abortion access means having access to a clinic and women's health clinics. It's much more. It's a symbol.
Here's Ari Fleischer talking about the leaker. And again, I think this is important from a political standpoint. They should not, they're going out and making this as if this leaker was, coming from the clerks who work for either Sotomayor, Kagan or KBJ. And there is absolutely no reason to believe that is the case. Not mathematically, not strategically. There is no value strategically, I think, politically, to
also
this leak for those who
they were ready to go.
Huh?
They were ready to go. Ari Fleischer, I mean, more than anything, it's like, oh, you had 100 of your top surrogates out there on the same messaging, like in an hour? That's interesting. I'm so curious.
There was a lot of message discipline on this. I mean, I don't know if they planned this or they were aware of it or whatnot, although I would imagine, but I do think that this was someone on the right and they did it for, well, at the very least, there are two outcomes I think that are clear, is that it's lock in some votes.
Or it's somebody that thinks that if we get ahead out of this naively, from a press perspective, that it might deter them from fully repealing it.
There could be somebody who has
I really do
no
think that's
strategy.
There's a possibility.
I mean, of course, it's a possibility. It could have been just like somebody working at the copy shop. I mean, apparently that's where, to the extent that there were leaks.
It could have been a Roberts clerk that is like, I'm a conservative, but I don't know. This is scary. I have a relationship with this Politico reporter, and it's scary to repeal Roe altogether. Here's this crazy brief that Alito wants Roberts to sign off on. I mean, like, it really could be that simple. I mean,
I don't think so, because being a clerk is not like being a clerk at a law office. Being a Supreme Court justice clerk is solidifying your career in law for life. It is so important to your career.
You don't get there unless you're incredibly ambitious and you want to be sitting on that court yourself. And you don't get there unless you are doing the bidding of like, I just find it hard to believe there was just one individual who leaked this like that. I find it hard to believe. These, you cannot find more sort of like ambitious, true believers than these clerks. And I find it hard to believe that somebody was freelancing on this. I really do.
Ask Ted Cruz.
Here is Ari Fleischer coming out with the line that seems to be completely consistent by all the right-wing talkers.
What really troubles me, not about the ruling itself. If that's the ruling itself, I accept and respect that ruling.
Oh, how big of him.
Make no mistake, Sean, this is an insurrection against the Supreme Court. I've already seen people on the left celebrating this leaker, calling him brave, trying to throw a Hail Mary to stop the ruling from being issued. Who at the Supreme Court will trust each other now if they know that their drafts are going to be leaked, just like everything else in Washington? The Supreme Court seemed to be the last institution standing that had internal integrity. This is an insurrection against the court, and it needs to be found who did it, and whatever legal means can be taken against them needs to be taken.
They're so lazy. They just want to they want to undercut all of the left's critiques of the Republicans and their extremism. So they're trying to water down what insurrection means to go after a leaker on the Supreme Court.
I mean, it's doing double duty. But I mean, this is a gift to them, because if this comes out and there is no second order issue, what if this comes out in June and it's just that, and it's the Alito ruling? There is no way to deflect from it, make it about something else. If it comes out in June,
they'll find something else.
If it no, but my point is, this is just, I don't know. It's wrapped up in a bow, I think. But
I really think there's a distinct possibility that someone was freaked out by. I mean, again, look, we have a difference of opinion on what the motivations could be. I don't really think we'll know. I don't know. I really hope whoever it is, I hope they don't get caught, basically, because I find some of the rhetoric coming out about how we need to prosecute and look into this problematic.
Well, there's no law.
There's no law.
I hope they get caught.
But
and
John
then they just get
Kennedy's
fired.
on the floor talking about getting an investigation. There's calls for an FBI investigation into this.
And good for White House, though, because he says, I don't know what law you would, but here it is. This is John Kennedy. This is the judiciary hearing, was just coincidentally having a hearing on judges, right? I mean, on what specifically, on I can't remember. So they were having a hearing on something else, and it immediately turned into the question of the leak. And here's John Kennedy going off on this, and White House going what's the legal implications here? None.
This misguided zealot who leaked this document took away from the American people. I look forward to your testimony.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. It's an interesting separation of powers question. Why FBI agents from the executive branch should be running around within the Supreme Court
This is White
interviewing
House.
clerks and staff and justices themselves, if it's not appropriate for Congress to exercise its legislative powers with regard to those standards. So it will be interesting to see that.
Well, let me respond to that, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the United States Supreme Court has its own police force, and I don't think it's at all uncommon to have police forces cooperate. And what I hope happens, everybody's entitled to his opinion. But what I hope happens is that the authorities at the Department of Justice, who I believe will be called in, should be called in, put the full force and power of their agency to find out who leaked this document and to prosecute that person civilly and criminally to the full extent of the law. I don't care who it is. I don't care what their politics is. This isn't right.
Benghazi.
I guess we'll begin by trying to identify what law that person might have violated. Let me turn to Chairman Durbin to make his opening.
Good point. And I mean, there is no law. You don't even have a conflict of interest law that deals, even a code of ethics for the Supreme Court justices. And there is no law. I would like them to find the leaker and fire them. I wouldn't want, again, this is not, I don't think this is a whistleblow type of situation, but I don't think, to have the FBI on there, because the justification for the FBI is because they have their own police force. That doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't.
The reason why people would have the FBI is because they don't have their own police force.
And also in the context of all the so-called Russiagate stuff, isn't the whole big thing they're all upset about intelligence agencies and other agencies coordinating with each other or cooperating with each other? I thought John Kennedy would not be cool with the FBI and whatever Supreme Court body would.
But it's why he calls him a zealot. He calls the leaker him. Now I'm sounding like Ari Fleischer. Him or her calls the leaker a zealot. No, it's just that's not ours. We like our zealots.
It's another Benghazi. This is their tactic now. It's like hearing after hearing after hearing and distract, get your base outraged at the other party for doing some sort of injustice. This is totally manufactured, in my opinion. This is just classic. This is their strategy that they've been doing for the last 10 years. Find one very long story with legs, drag it out, excite people into this. Hunter Biden's not working right now. So this is the next piece.
There is no doubt in my mind that
no doubt
they're very good at this. There's not going to be a story that is, or let me put it this way. The number of stories that are going to exclusively look at the material implications of this decision is going to be diminished because, and we're doing it here because of the leak.
Exactly. That's right.
And so it's always going to be competing for airtime with the leak in and of itself.
Well, waking up this morning, I had CBS on, and that was exactly my response was like, why is this the first three stories and not Emma, you made a tweet last night about it, and how quickly they were willing to just compromise on the magnitude of the real story here, because there's a bunch of Republicans and their PR firms sending out press releases, pitching these stories to the newsroom saying, you got to talk about we're getting ready to investigate who it was.
And they are already,
so they cover it.
The media is primed to take this bait, right? I mean, at the very least, the Republicans are seizing on this opportunity because they understand that there's nothing that our media apparatus cares about more than norms and process. And if they can make it seem like this insidious undercutting of those things and make it about that, then that can be the conversation.
Also, the dignity of an institution. If Democrats want to go hardcore, suddenly they care so much about the dignity of this institution, just preserving. Yet they don't give an F about the insurrectionists storming the Capitol.
It's not helpful to laud the Supreme Court in any way anymore. Like, we have to talk. I mean, there needs to be like a full-on political messaging campaign from the Democrats that this is an extremist body, and that they need to be stopped. That's how I feel about the politicization of the court, but I don't know.
But there's so many steps until getting there. I mean, I hear you, Emma, and that's, but we can't even get through with the filibuster. I mean, there's so many other things that we can't get that are simpler, like lower hanging fruit at this point. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it all at once and transform the entire conversation, but as long as we have these existing people in leadership,
yeah.
It's not happening.
Well, but I think the value of it is politically. I mean, I think, one of the completely undersold stories of the 2016 election was keeping Merrick Garland or keeping Obama from filling that seat. And and I've never seen in my mind, a sufficient analysis of how many votes came in because that seat was empty. And the left, broad left, the Democratic Party has never had the appreciation. And to be fair, Biden's administration has been far more aggressive in filling, judicial seats. But the left has never been attuned to this. And frankly, what Emma is suggesting about the court, it was Al Gore's failure and Joe Lieberman, Al Gore's failure and the Democratic Party's failure to take a shining example of the politicization of that court in 2000. And they refused to do it at that time. And these things, the interest develops on these. The debt that you owe, the vacuum that you've created gets filled, and they just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And when the Voting Rights Act was struck down, or at least, Section 5 was eviscerated, on and on and on, there is a failure to appreciate the importance of that court because it is so politicized.
Well, the lesson's been learned now. I mean,
really?
It's easy in retrospect to say Al Gore could have done things differently, and I think we all agree that he could have done things differently. But
I said it
did
at the
he
time,
anticipate
to be fair.
at the time? Did anybody ever anticipate the dumpster fire of the next like 8 years afterwards. But now the lessons have been learned, and the strategy remains the same. I mean, today, yes, you did, but say Democratic, institutionalists, whatever, party institutionalists.
But you say institutionalists, right? You say, and that is the fundamental problem. They are 400 times more committed to institutions and norms than they are to winning, and actually delivering. And
But if back then, so say that prior to 2000, plenty of flaws. Democrats lost the House for 30 years in 1992. They could have adjusted their strategy, but in their minds, at that point, it hadn't gone completely, off the cliff. We're off the cliff now. We're so far off the cliff. And the strategy hasn't changed for these institutionalists. I mean, Chuck Schumer got on stage today, and I wanted to barf when he started talking about the politicization and blaming McConnell for Merrick Garland and exactly what you just said. But I have never heard him give a big roaring speech like that before. Now they put their foot down, and these are just words.
Oh yeah, they'll fundraise.
These
off
are just
this.
words.
They'll fundraise off this. They're very happy to fundraise off of this. Even like, I'm sorry, Madison Cawthorn talked about coke orgies, and there's coincidentally like 5 different stories on him in the paper that are about like, I don't know, whatever, inappropriate texts or
pictures
that like may have a gay joke in them. I mean, the underlying context of some of those stories is homophobic in my opinion. But regardless, that's clearly, in my opinion, coming out because you have Tom Tillis trying to get him out of Congress.
It's a coincidence. Right. It's a coincidence.
We have done story after story about Joe Manchin's skeletons in his closet. You want to win? Go after his incredible corruption, which could be prosecuted. His children's corruption in West Virginia. Do politics. Try to actually change things, because now it's too late. Now it's time for a speech on the Senate floor, and then lots of damn fundraising emails about, how you need to vote because the right to an abortion is under attack. No, you need to get rid of the filibuster and enshrine it in law, and do it now. Do it now. I mean, they're not going to, but in an ideal world, they would do that, and they would do politics, and they'd threaten Manchin and Sinema until they got what they wanted.
Don't you know it's just Bernie's fault?
Mike in Berkeley says on the IM says it's my failure. Mike in Berkeley, not me, Sam, but Mike in Berkeley's. In 1996, I was running to an exam at Berkeley, and I think he said surfed Antonin Scalia down a flight of stairs at the law library without killing him. If I hadn't failed my moment to affect history, Gore is president, 9/11 doesn't happen, Iraq War 2, and this bullshit. So, I mean, you need to seize the moment, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly if it's like going to be an accident.
Surfing, is that what he said? Surfing?
This is
and that was Alito or Scalia?
Scalia.
Both are very
Alito
funny.
was not in until 2006.
Right. Well, I mean, he
He
could
was
have been
Bush appointee.
in Stanford or whatever, but yeah, interesting.
All right, let's just turn to this moment. Let's just break things up just a little bit. Do something a little bit lighter. Tucker Carlson warping the words neoliberalism to I don't know what.
Good evening and welcome to a special edition of Tucker Carlson. It was a year ago this month that Joe Biden promised to transform this country, change it more than any president had in over 100 years. He was going to create a new economy.
What? Joe Biden?
Nothing's going to fundamentally change.
Well, going back to normal, I think, was the promise. But okay, let's just see what lie he is creating a new predicate for.
Had in over 100 years. He was going to create a new economy through what he called, quote, a once-in-a-generation investment in America, unlike anything we've seen or done since we built the interstate highway system. Wow, that's big. What would it cost? Well, more than $4 trillion. How much is that exactly? Well, it's more than twice the gross domestic product of the entire nation of Canada, and of course, most other countries, too. At the Washington Post, they suggested that Joe Biden's promise...
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to Wait till Tucker finds out how big our defense budget is relative to other people's defense budget. It's going to freak him out.
Also, when Pelosi and Biden said this is a once in a lifetime with regards to the infrastructure spending, that wasn't because it was that impressive. It was that we haven't done anything, one.
Exactly.
And B, that they want to apologize and say, hey, donors, this is the only time we're going to do this. This isn't like a trend.
Exactly.
So those were the reasons that he said that.
Yes, don't worry. This won't happen again. We've got potholes older than my oldest daughter that we need to fill. All right, go ahead.
Washington Post, they suggested that Joe Biden's promise marked, quote, the waning of the neoliberal era. Now, they describe neoliberalism as centrist liberalism friendly to Wall Street, when, of course, it's not exactly that. Neoliberalism is looting with a smokescreen of race and gender politics, so you won't notice that it happened.
What?
But the Post told us, relax.
I got news for you, folks.
Don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining.
There is perhaps no greater stalwart on television of the neoliberal order than that millionaire heir, Tucker Swanson McNear Carlson.
Yeah.
He comes out of a libertarian ideology that is foundational that to neoliberalism.
Yep.
It is, in fact, almost completely synonymous. The idea that the market will solve all of your problems. And
in the 80s, we understood neoliberalism as like Thatcher and Reagan.
Yes.
Milton
And
Friedman,
the market will solve all your problems. It comes out of, Hayek and the guys at Mont Pelerin, and who essentially believe that you should have control of over the government resources to basically provide for the market. And
that's the looting, though. You missed it. That's the looting.
That's the loot, I guess. I mean, what Biden was supposedly going to do, supposedly at one point after the big rescue plan, was to actually have government do things instead of having the market do them. Or wait for the market to do it.
This whole this is about protecting the right wing of neoliberalism, as implying that there's only a left wing of neoliberalism that wants to make you go through corporate diversity training or something like that. But of course, like the right wing, like when Ted Cruz appeals to cultural issues too, is doing the exact same thing. Ultimately to deliver for Wall Street.
Tucker does that all the time. He conflates elites with cultural elites, aka black people at your job that may tell you that you can't be racist here or something like that. Or the fact that on television you see a gay couple in a TV ad and a black couple, and you feel like, oh, they're in charge of everything now. Those are the elites, as opposed to me and all of my friends.
And to be fair, Tucker will invite on a bunch of leftists who are going to refute his definition of neoliberalism.
See, that's it too, right?
That's the good thing about getting those people on there. They'll set them straight.
He's good at this, and it's scary. He's good at taking what, the edges, the fringe, the door types have in terms of critiques of the Democratic Party, and trying to rope them in by saying, I understand this. This is neoliberalism, right? And that's a bad thing.
Tucker's called up people and to pick their brains about their critiques from the left of centrist libs, and their person said I'd love to come on and say it. He's like, no, we're good. I'm just gonna
right, exactly.
No, I want to muddy the definition to such a degree that it's indecipherable, but still weaponize that anger in order to bring people into the fold. And he's actually, unfortunately, effective at doing that. That's why every online personality that tells you that Tucker Carlson's an anti-war voice is full of shit, because they're actually just suckers, because he's using you, basically.
Until he's talking about Lockheed Martin on TV, I don't believe anything he says. But fundamentally, I mean, what he's doing, I think the populist model of Trump doesn't work with the demographics today. They're elder, populist, former union workers, whatever it is they're trying to get, white men in the Midwest, and they're aging out. And so they have to kind of appeal to another version of populists, and it's this anti-institutional, younger male, angry group of people who may have heard this term neoliberalism and may have even been hearing it from Bernie people. And let's rebrand it and explain what it really is. Which sounds like he's criticizing communism. Like, I don't even understand. He's like rebranding it about, oh, they're looting the government. Who's looting the government?
Yeah, that's where this populism stuff falls down, because he has to like cast aspersions at the size of the Build Back Better bill as well, like some sort of old-fashioned conservative.
Right.
Let's go to some of the IM's Idaho correspondent. Sam, I'm going to level with you. You don't look anything like the picture on your website or YouTube. You actually look better. Oh, thank you. Petition for new headshots of Sam. Henry, I've got some updates for you, but we will talk about that later. Hey, Sam, do you think SCOTUS, even considering to touch Roe v. Wade, this will re-energize Democrats to get out and vote this fall? I mean, it should. I mean, it should. Right?
It's hard to say right now. It's really hard to say right now.
I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, if I'm running now in a purple district or a purple state, I can now bring up, would you vote for a ban on abortion when you get elected? Because that is the perfect wedge issue. Because you know a certain percentage of their base, if they're running as a Republican, it could be 20%, could be 30%, could be 50, could be 60 or 70% of their voters don't want to hear this guy say no ban on abortion. And now it is less of a hypothetical.
Well, and where we are in the primary season too, like they're just starting. I'm curious how this is going to affect the Republican primaries, because if you're in a purple district and the Democrat that wins, progressive or centrist or whoever, or incumbent, is running against someone who's an extremist because of this, they're more likely to have extremists winning the Republican primaries, which sets it up better for the general, for us. So this is the argument they always make against us. Now inverse it. The more extremists running in this climate is actually going to hurt them in these purple districts.
So, but how does this play in the Republican primaries, to the extent that they're, Ohio's happening today, for instance? But I mean, do they're going to go harder on abortion, or are they just not going to talk about it in the primary?
I think if you're an extremist on the right, you're going to mobilize around this, and especially in these smaller districts. I mean, this is, forget about Senate, but focus on Congress and state legislative districts. Of course, they're going to, the most active radical people show up in the primaries, right? So I think it's going to help the far right out, who's already running a lot of extremists around the country. And essentially, if you are in a purple district, it'll affect you. The problem is when you get down to the state level, everything's gerrymandered to death, that who knows at the end of the day how much it's going to affect Democrats.
We should also say on that note, just a New York State court a couple of days ago invalidated the congressional map that New York Democrats had written up. The Democratic Party in New York State has appealed to a federal appellate court to stay the state court's ruling, arguing that we are too close to the election for the, and that may, it's a long shot, it may work, because the Supreme Court, the U.S. federal Supreme Court, has, sort of set a precedent, although they seem to change it around depending on how the ruling goes. Surprise, surprise. For which part benefits which party. But so it's possible. At the very least, these districts would remain for this election. I don't know.
Just for folks to understand, the election, we had election reforms in New York State, that we have very complicated elections. The primaries run different dates for different positions. So, turnout is notoriously low. So they consolidated the elections once the IDC were voted out. The Senate consolidated the elections to June 26th. The congressional primaries used to be in June, and the primaries were in August. So now they're saying that the primaries would be moved to August again, all of them, not just the state house, but the congressional as well. So it's the Senate and the congressional maps that are up for question. But now, a young Republican Party leader has done the same thing for the assembly maps. So this is absolutely The Republicans are not leaving any part of the country off the table at this point. You know, you have Eric Adams, who's basically a Republican mayor. He's not much different than previous Republican mayors that we've had, including Bloomberg so far. And he didn't win with a majority. So they're electioneering their wins right now. And that's important because New York is fundamentally a Democratic state. And the arguments they make about this being the redistricting being heavy-handed, I just don't buy it, because when you look at the population of New York, it is overwhelmingly Democratic, even upstate now, even upstate. So it's like, if a Republican did this in a minority and the maps were even, then I'd see the argument. But it doesn't make sense to me, because there is a majority of Democrats in this country. And so you're going to have maps, no matter what, that are more Democratic. It's just how this works.
The entire argument by the state court was procedural, it seems to me, not even in terms of outcome.
That's right.
Let's play this clip. It is primary day in Ohio. Josh Mandel has sort of disappeared, it feels like, out of that Ohio primary race. He had double the polling that his nearest rival, and I think the idea was that he was banking on being the Trump candidate, and then J.D. Vance had a real impressive come to Donald moment where he realized how wrong he had been about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump,
kiss my feet.
As Donald Trump says, I endorsed J.D. Mandel. And he meant, of course, J.D. Vance.
Yeah, let he who cast the first accusation of being the next Hitler, how the phrase goes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Here is Josh Mandel on Newsmax talking about that moment.
And Josh, of course, a lot of people were talking about the comments from President Trump this past weekend at the rally, where he got a few things mixed up. Let's take a look at that clip.
And if I lost one race, they'd say Trump was humiliated. That's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for one race. We've endorsed Dr. Oz. We've endorsed JP, right? J.D. Mandel, and he's doing great. They're all doing good.
Now, some people think this was a gaffe. I think this is just President Trump, Josh, hedging his bets.
Well, listen, as the voters here know, the Trump America First voters know, there's no candidate in this race who has advanced the Trump America First agenda like I have. I was the first statewide official to support President Trump here in Ohio when all of my opponents were with John Kasich to the bitter end. And I'm looking forward to winning the primary tomorrow and then working with President Trump to advance the America First agenda.
There you go. Josh Mandel trying to make hay. It seems to me, is Newsmax going to draw that many voters? Maybe.
That silence after the end, he was like, is he really thinking that he was doing both?
Well, maybe they could have.
Yeah.
Can I check him with my campaign advisor to see if that
He thought my middle name was P. He thought my middle name was P, right? Because he got the J down.
JP.
JP, JD.
It's a fun experiment to watch.
That is what Trump is best for.
This race is going to be interesting because going into this, something like 25% was still undecided. The genuine anti-Trump candidate seems to be picking up some support in the late days. And this is one of those classic cases where a Josh Mandel provides a real good opportunity for, whoever the Democratic nominee is. Could be Ryan, could be Harper. And either way, Josh Mandel is an extremist, and that's the type of person, that's where you start to see, like Ohio, all of a sudden ends up being a potential pickup for Democrats. I would imagine a similar dynamic in Pennsylvania, right? And maybe in New Hampshire. I'm not sure who they've got nominated on the Republican side, but I think Maggie Hassan's up for re-election, and something like this could make a big difference up there as well. So this is, and I don't know if it was, how this will implicate the Republican primaries. I wonder if we're going to see more moderate Republicans getting some support, and by moderate I mean saying we should not be no capital punishment for for women to get abortion.
I don't see that happening.
The Maggie Hassan thing is interesting just separately, that like she caught a big break that Chris Sununu, the governor's not running, but then she's also just basically trying to become like Joe Manchin and like visiting the border and stuff like that. It's just like a weird vibe.
Yep.
Speaking of
I just don't see Mitch McConnell supporting a more center-right candidate, because that's where, I mean, if you're going to find the center support, it's going to be from McConnell's wing, but McConnell is fully on board with what's happening right now. Right. So I really think that the far right is going to do a lot better, because, you know, they're going to be stuck. The center right candidates are just not going to have the resources, because at the end of the day, the center right is funded by these right wing extremist anti-abortion folks. It's not just the QAnon people.
Yeah,
but they're going to
McConnell
write it
has
more
faith
than
that-
the centers.
McConnell has faith that whatever nut job emerges, it doesn't really necessarily matter. They're going to uphold the interests of big money and of capitalists, and he can work with that, right? So he stays out of these things to a degree that I think Democrats could potentially learn from, but they won't.
Matt, were you about to say?
Oh, speaking of Ohio primaries, vote for Nina Turner.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you make of AOC's endorsement coming in on this day? Yesterday?
Me?
Yep.
You know, it's not great to endorse like the day before. You can't, I mean, I don't think Nina's having difficulty fundraising at all, but usually if you're endorsing earlier, you want to be able to do a lot with that candidate. I think what would have helped is obviously doing rallies and other sorts of materials, putting her on mail pieces if she's doing popular in the primary. But I think she had to deal with, AOC had to deal with the Progressive Caucus and stepping out of line with the Progressive Caucus, which is fundamentally, they have that rule. Like you don't turn on your own. But I think the inner conversation in the Progressive Caucus as it is outside is, what does it mean to be in the Progressive Caucus? Yeah. You can't say to me, I have to support this person who doesn't support any things that I believe in, that we're supposed to believe in the Progressive Caucus. So
Chantel Brown should not be in the Progressive Caucus. This is a person who's like immediately starting to troll Joe Biden on the Iran deal. Like she should be booted from the caucus, or the caucus is completely worthless.
100%.
I mean, that was supposed to be the project, right?
Yeah, which was supposed to be. Right. I don't really understand. I think she endorsed Medicare for all, then got let in. But like, I don't, Jayapal, I feel like, that was not a good decision. And secondly, I know people were really upset when the CPC endorsed her in general, but it's like, that's not the issue to me. The issue is the fact that she was in there in the first place. I'm happy if the CPC is going to rally behind their Congress people and their incumbents, but then they have to actually be progressive.
Holy cow.
More purity test.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a platform, it's not just signing on, because everybody's signing on to Medicare for all. But once that thing's going for a vote, I want to see who's going to fight for it and who stays on it. So if you're signing some sort of thing to enter the CPC, don't take certain money. I mean, this is what we do at our organization, Matriarch. We say, you sign this form. If you go into Congress and you prove otherwise, not only do we have the right to take back our endorsement, but we're going to do so publicly. If you take any money that aligns with these groups, then we have the right to retract our endorsement. A lot of organizations, unions do that.
If you have positions,
yes.
I mean, right, I want, as Matt just said, I want purity tests.
Yeah, I mean,
let's go.
This is, I think, a rolling failure of Jayapal's leadership.
That's not even a purity test. This is what unions do. This is what an endorsement means. This is what it means to be in a caucus. It's not like purity tests, like I'm not voting for this bill, which has a bunch of other things attached.
Tongue-in-cheek about the phrase purity tests, right?
Right.
No, I know.
But AOC and Omar, when they came on the program, both referenced making the Progressive Caucus mean something other than just some type of whatever it is, the ADA stamp of approval that you can just buy with $4,000, donation to the caucus fundraising, that you actually need to have a set of positions that are litmus tests, and you need to hold those to get in. News, I don't know if you've heard this, Nomi. Kathy Hochul has just picked Antonio Delgado as her lieutenant governor, which opens up the Democratic congressperson in the 19th district, which happens to be my voting district for the past 16 years.
And that is also, is that not where Zephyr Teachout ran?
Zephyr Teachout ran in that district. It's where Kristen Gillibrand was the first person to, when it was back the 20th, became the first Democrat to take that district from Sweeney, who was in the Republican leadership, but there was images of him partying with college kids that made people think like maybe this guy shouldn't be our congressperson. But it was Gillibrand, and then it was a Republican. I can't remember his name for 2 or 3. He had 2 or 3 terms. Was from Kinderhook.
Oh my God.
John Faso.
No,
Thank
Faso
you.
beat
Teach out.
Beat
What's-
Teach Out, but before Faso was
got it,
another
got
guy.
it.
I can't remember his name. He was a 3 tours in Iraq, a colonel, and then Delgado beat Faso.
Delgado is the brother of one of my friends from college.
Wow. Well, there you go.
Oh, funny.
And, I mean, sorry to his brother. I won't say his name, but what has he done to earn this except for just like be the most standard Democrat in Congress imaginable?
I think it's being most standard, and I think that district is a sort of a purple district. It is one which has, I mean, that's why Gillibrand, was teed up to get appointed senator that first time, because it comes right from it's a very rural district, but there's also now with the 19, in its formation as the 19th, you start getting to like almost like the exurbs of New York on some level. There's some commuters there, but it's also there's a lot of farmland.
Yeah.
But it's changing. But I think that's fundamentally it is with these lines up right now and it being so tight and potentially a bad year. I think Delgado, like, you know what? Why not? Why not? Like, I get appointed in the meantime.
Well, I know why he did it.
Yeah, but this is interesting about Hochul. So Hochul does need downstate, and my guess is people just were saying no. Like, sorry, Delgado. My guess is you probably weren't at the top of the list. They were looking at maybe 5 or 6 other people downstate, and it was too much of a risk for them for many reasons. And she could have asked him before this ruling happened again. I mean, there's just so many things at play right now that it's anybody's game. But it's a great move for him.
Yeah, Nomi,
Get out of that.
Nomi, to your point there, I think his district potentially might get more red if the lines don't stay the same, and he also might get put as a result in like a bed bunk situation with the DCCC chair, Sean Patrick Maloney. So if the redistricting goes a certain way, he might get paired.
Is that right? Maloney's way west.
Well, in the sense they might redraw them pretty significantly. There's a chance that they might be in the same. They might get to the same district.
I can't imagine that you would cross the river and go that far.
Well,
west. Isn't Maloney like west, like Elmira-ish?
No, he's
not all the way in Elmira.
He's actually closer to. He's in Westchester and a little further up.
Maloney is?
Yeah.
He's closer to the Hudson than Elmira.
I can't imagine the 19th is going to go that south unless they break up. I guess it depends on how they break it up.
So now,
Swazi's old district went all the way into Westchester.
Yeah, right. That's also like Nadler's district is so Byzantine and like
So they must have redrawn it recently. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the map because it includes Oneonta. And I mean, I thought that it used to have Middletown in it, but maybe I'm just.
They redrew it this year.
Right, well,
whatever. This is
let's read some IMs. Brock from Ohio, the new transition for the fun half slaps, but I wish it would have included some audio from Michael. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here. Could have fit in somewhere. R.I.P. Michael left his best. Owen Levine, impeach Biden and SCOTUS now. Harry Reid failed. Truck nuts. With the inevitable end of Roe v. Wade, folks may want to check their state laws for trigger laws. Most states have them, including my home state of Michigan. Ours is a 1930s law that I was not aware of until this week. Right. I believe the governor has been trying to invalidate that and sue in the Supreme Court to invalidate that law. As of like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. Debbie Stabenow just got off stage. She was talking about it right before the show started.
Roe v. Wade was only enacted in 1973 at the same time as Title IX. It was in the 70s that women were also given the legal right. I mean, that's the thing. Our guest said, you didn't have a credit. No, you weren't allowed to have a credit card in your name as a married woman. Could not get your own credit line. Any type of freedom, like financial accounts.
Although sometimes when I'm late night shopping, I wish someone would take my credit card away.
Well, there you go. But at least you're voluntarily giving it up. If you are 50 years old, women's rights essentially came about during your lifetime. Don't forget. Absolutely correct. Left of the box, a reminder for people going out into the live show to check out the MR Discord Boston Live Show channel to arrange to meetups. We need someone from Boston to suggest good spots to meet at. Looking forward to it. Tomalo Fink. Happy Newish Newsday Tuesday. Solidarity with those impacted by the Supreme Court is preparing to do. Here in Britain, we have local elections. This Thursday, May 5th, the Labour Party have been keen to inform everyone that Liberal Democrats want to decriminalize drugs, reduce the use of prisons, and decommission Britain's nuclear weapons. Someone should tell the Labour Party that's not the own they appear to think it is. Talia from Tampa. Hey, MR crew. This Roe news is really not helpful for the anxiety panic I've been struggling with, but what are we supposed to do other than just vote? Voting just feels like Lucy in the football. Well, I hope our guest, I know you wrote this before we had our guest on, but there's going to be opportunities to build relationships in communities that particularly have less access to information about the opportunity for things like medical abortions. And there's going to be networks set up, and you're going to be able to, basically order it on by your phone. Tojo's bald head.
I think you should sign a petition. That's what you should do. More petition signing.
You're being facetious.
Clearly.
Tojo's bald head. The Supreme Court is illegitimate. Anyone who gives an F if it gets leaked. A strong boomer energy from today from Sam. Again.
Why?
I don't like. Well, I think the leak is detrimental to those opposing this ruling. I think it's appropriate.
I'm in the middle of you guys.
In that instance, I think it's not appropriate. But I mean, that's as far as I'll go. Any more than
detrimental to the Republicans, you mean? So
no, I think it's detrimental.
I think the leak is coming from the Republicans.
I do too. And I think it's detrimental to people who are against the Roe v. Wade decision.
I'm on the okay. I'm in between the two of you. I think it came from Republicans, but I think it's going to benefit the Democrats because they only win when they go too far.
But Nomi and Sam, you both agree that they leaked it to dilute the time over which people have to respond to this. Is that the theory?
Yes.
Okay.
And to distract and carry, it's like a 1-2 punch.
Is an overreach. But I think the leak diminishes the impact of it.
I think fundamentally it's good to know things, and I like to know things when they're knowable. But I think it is a good to Emma's point, but I also think this is a good sort of exercise to run with any leaks, even ones that seem really good on the surface of it. Why am I learning about this way?
That is why that has been my watchwords about anything in Politico for 15 years.
100%.
When you read anything in Politico, you have to ask.
Thank you.
What is it that the person who gave this to Politico wants to have happen? That's the way you read Politico. It's not the writing there. It's why am I hearing this? Because Politico, anything that goes to Politico is specifically being used it's being weaponized by somebody. It is not
And that's
let's put it this
but
way.
I'm in agreement about the weapon. I totally in agreement about Politico particularly, and it's not just them, but they're the most egregious example of it. But I think the simplest explanation is that it was somebody who saw the opinion as extremist, and they gave it to the press, and we're not going to know. But I just feel
is that person giving it to Politico?
You are yeah. I mean, I don't know. You're I think outsmarting the meaning behind the leak. I mean, you're
a clerk who is worried about this brief, and you're going to bring it to Politico?
I mean, I'm in Washington D.C. I might know somebody.
I go to I think the idea that you go to Politico. There's a reason why Snowden went to Greenwald at the time, and you go to the person that you think you're going to trust the most. That person who thinks that this is too extreme ain't trusting anybody working for Politico. That's right. That's my sense.
Yeah, pulling back the layer on Politico, and granted, Politico has been bought, so I don't know if they have the new German company. I don't know if they have new rules. But when I had my little fight with Politico, and there were 48 factual errors in a story that we presented to them, their lawyers said to us, "We don't deal with anything challenging the story until after the story has been published." And we said, well, we happen to know that you've put thousands of dollars into promoting this story through all of your newsletters that day, buying ads on Twitter around this story. So I'm curious, is this an advertisement? And our lawyer was talking to their lawyers, and their lawyer said, we don't answer anything until after the story has been published. And basically the damage has been done. 48 fact checks, 48 verifiable fact checks. They are a political tool, and we have to look at them that way. And who has those relationships? I mean, are they going to take something also from a left-wing, potentially left-wing clerk? Maybe every once in a while they do, but for the most part, their track record is very much in line with the state, with the right wing.
I'm not even claiming it's a left-wing clerk. I'm claiming it's someone clerking for some of these judges, and they're younger. And again, I don't know, and so like I'm almost just like I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. I'm just prognosticating. Somebody that working for John Roberts, center-right, younger person, still believes abortion is going to be real, or it should be.
Did they get that job?
Should be law. Yeah, I think they do.
There is not a single anti-abortion. I mean, I mean,
I don't know. Maybe you're right. I'm like we
think about the foundations.
Until...
They're backed by like the Heritage Foundation. All these organizations
Federal
back
Society.
these people to be clerks, to build the
That's a good
pipeline.
point. That's a good point.
Stop the meal. Awful take, Sam. You're playing right into it. But even by giving them that much, this isn't appropriate. It's heroic. Would you say it's inappropriate for an Exxon employee to leak internal documents about them knowingly poisoning some water supply? No. Absolutely not. Because if that whistleblower doesn't do that, it will never come out. But here's the thing about a Supreme Court decision. If it doesn't come out, then it doesn't do anything. But this was going to come out in June. So but
it doesn't need to necessarily be as broad as overturning Roe, if there's public backlash to this degree.
I think that it is far less likely that a Kavanaugh or a Coney Barrett or any of them are going to change their minds now be seen as responding to liberal outrage.
That's right.
It's far less likely that they're going to change their mind. So this is a move to lock them in to the extent that it was. Okay. And even if it does get watered down, then again, the story is going to be, well, it's overturning Roe v. Wade, but it's sort of like a soft overturning of Roe v. Wade. That's my sense. So this is not, and this is my point. This is not a whistleblower because what's the whistle that's being blown? This is going to be announced publicly in June. And the idea, like, this is just simply not whistleblowing by any definition of the word. It's literally like, somebody coming out and going, on the Majority Report, Nomi's going to be on announcing it in the morning. Like, yeah, I mean, it's going to happen. On some level. And now, of course, we've got to have her on because everybody's expecting her to come.
Regardless,
also, it's a campaign
value
tactic
in exposing the insanity of the institution. And I do think that this did that.
But this is also so like Glenn Greenwald is brilliant at this, right? Sometimes he is right, but sometimes when he is right, he is actually serving the right wing's interests. Or sometimes a vehicle in which we might say, okay, we agree on this sliver, still is a weapon against a greater goal. I mean, they're also thinking like, what are we going to be campaigning on in the next 5 months? Biden is not really horribly effing up Ukraine right now. They can't, Hunter Biden's not working. Afghanistan's not working. Student debt relief might happen. Title 42 is being reversed. They now have something to play the victim about because, Senate is going to be up. They can't have hearings anytime soon, right? They're going to be campaigning all summer, and they need something to campaign on.
That's the thing that's why, I say, okay, let's see the results of that investigation. Every one of the clerks, hand over your phones right now. I'm joking. I don't think that's appropriate either.
Yeah, it's not.
Maybe Clarence Thomas's wife leaked it.
Al from Cincinnati. they leave the briefs around the house. I went to the bathroom. I picked up my home and garden, and in between the home and garden and the catalog for, some stuff, FOA Schwartz or whatever it is, the sharper image.
FOA Schwartz?
I don't know. Al from Cincinnati. I want to care about this. I want to give my energy yelling at a DT protest. I want to help people with things people never helped me with. I had the money to fix my problems and help at the same time, but I need to give up everything in my short-sighted hazing crybabies. What? I don't follow any of that.
A little bit confused there.
Spewing on. McConnell is clearly attempting to mobilize sympathy for pro-lifers. And of course. How can we be the victims now that we've taken away this...
privacy has been...
A Square, Sam, so many things leading to this moment, including Bush v. Gore SCOTUS decision. Osita Nuevu had one of the best tweets in this horrible coming decision. The right winning and yet never of the clock with framing the news as the leak versus the actual decision.
Yeah.
Some days it seems beyond bleak, not holding hope for the Democratic response and actions. Punch-drunk pulpit. The leak is inappropriate. When 9 million people have this kind of power over over millions of lives, we should know everything. We should know everything. We should know what they had for lunch. Leak more. I again.
But the problem is we're getting selective leaks. Like I don't have a strong opinion.
If you want to have an entirely, a transparent process, all in favor. My introduction to SCOTUS was an adult was the Citizens United. Since then, I haven't wasted my time seeing it as a legit institution. If you have watched this show with any consistency over the past 10 years, you will know that you will not find anybody on YouTube who has been talking about how illegitimate the Supreme Court is over those 10 years. My entering into this professionally was a function of the 2000 election. I do not think the Supreme Court is legitimate. The last thing that I want on the list of reforms I want at the Supreme Court is that drafts of briefs should be, leaked. That is not helping. It's not even making the case about its legitimacy, or one way or another. The point is the illegitimacy of the Supreme Court is far more structural than the idea of people are breaking decorum. And I just think this leak is not working the way that people seem to think it will. Random info. Shocked. I'm shocked that someone might be ignoring procedure. Teacher Dan, that partisan vile scumbag Mitch McConnell's morality is what seeps out of the a-hole of truth once all its functions cease. Shouldn't be bitching about the stunts of others. Effer. Train boy. Thanks to 6 unelected Catholics, America will soon have worse abortion rights than Ireland. That's Atkinson. Sam's take that the leak is somehow inappropriate is kind of preposterous. I agree with Emma here that this is about the public good. And it's no less important than leaking policy change leading to a greater policy. Yes, except for again, when there's a deliberation, let's say it's even at like the FCC or in Congress, that something may happen, public pressure can change it. In this instance, public pressure is going to edify it. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, the public also is served by having some awareness over what strategy might be behind something like this. Like that's important as well.
Well, we knew where this was going. Like, we know the votes. We know who's going to vote on it. We know, I don't think there's anything watered down. There's no room for it. They've been preparing for this for 40 years. I don't think this was a leak. I think it was a press release.
Militant apathy. Roberts probably authorized the leak. It accomplishes 2 goals: gives the right-wing Catholics cover on the court cover, and allows them to say, "Look how bad it could have been," and it takes the steam out of it electorally. I hope it's not the case that it does, but it is. If let's put it this way: if this comes out 3 or like a month before the election, I would prefer that, I think, than it coming out 8 months before the election. I mean, it's just the same dynamic.
The kind of leaks I want to see are, if there's anybody who works for a news company that is seeing the press releases this morning and where they're coming from, please leak them to the Majority Report or the Nomiki Show. I would love to see which organizations, what messaging is overlapping. I want to see when they were released.
What time it showed up in their inboxes.
Exactly.
Yeah. we just happened to be able to get everybody in the office at 7 p.m. last night. We had everybody come back in. Los Tacos. The justice's opinion shouldn't be leaked. What do they think? They have a right to privacy? JB Davis.
Women don't.
There will be riots over Roe.
I hope so.
I hope you're right. For some reason, I can't get the Fun Half live on YouTube. It is in the description of the last show. Whenever Sam next denies being a boomer, play back his take on SCOTUS. Holy boomer Batman. Says left is deft. The best leftists, with all due respect, leaking the Supreme Court judges are going back on their statements that Roe is precedent or is worthy. But people don't seem to understand.
Guys, we beat this to death. IMers. I love you guys, but yeah. I don't know if these are older, so maybe.
Yes, tone deaf compliments. Susan Collins, so cute, so naive. She looked him in the eye, and damn it, they shared a beer. All right, let's do 10 more of these. Todd Cabell, Dr. Jill Biden is America's current Edith Bunker. The White House Correspondents' Dinner was nightmare fuel for social Democrats, even more so than the seemingly interminable NFL conscription series. White bourgeois liberals are living in semi-conscious safety on Starliner cruises. The poetry, folks. We got to cut down on the poetry. Lefty Lucifer. Hey, Sam, glad your voice sounds better than the ass farts coming from your nasal cavity last week. Thank you. Good to have you back. Props to the rest of the MR crew for holding down the fort during your boomer struggle with survive COVID. Love you all. That's very kind. Jared from Fenway. Hey, Sam. How would you rank the Supreme Court justices from most progressive to least? My ranking would be Sotomayor, Kagan, Breyer, Roberts, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Barrett, Alito, and Thomas.
That's a good ranking.
Yes, I would say that's the
Without
case.
KBJ, now she's one probably.
Barrett, Gorsuch, I don't know. And I would put KBJ before Sotomayor and Kagan.
Unless she proves us wrong based on her background.
Based on her background.
Yeah.
That's a guess. 2 kids in a trench coat. Just a reminder, it's only 26 states as they are right now. But here in Wisconsin, if Evers loses this fall, you can add us to the list.
Yeah. It's 26, I think, max right now, right? But 13 have these trigger laws ready to go for sure. So I don't know.
Yesterday, Chris Burdick says, and I am recommended that you book Robert Evans from Behind the Bastards podcast as a guest. I second that recommendation. My introduction to the podcast was 2-parter where Evans and guest Paul F. Tompkins. Oh, that's funny. Did a deep dive into how Rush Limbaugh became Rush Limbaugh.
We should try to get Paul F. Tompkins on the show.
Yeah, I should have Paul on. I had no idea he was doing podcasts like that. All right, 2 more. R-Tax. I'm curious how this court decision is going to affect my purple district. Yeah, okay. That's NY 19th. And final IM of the day. It was Patrick from Worcester complaining about the Fun Half not being streamed and wasn't here from the beginning. So I have to do it with somebody else.
It's in the description.
I know it. Let's see. Matt's Bong. Is this even a leak? It's more like a sneak preview.
Thank you. Agree,
Good job,
Matt's
Matt.
Bong.
Torrenting a movie early.
I feel like we're going to have to keep talking about the leak this week, but I feel
Mission
like
accomplished.
we've exhausted
Mission
it in
accomplished.
one day. I'm already sick of the leak talk. Already.
Matt, Bradley, Nomi, Emma, great job today. See you folks tomorrow. Hang in there. We've got plenty of time to prepare, I guess, particularly if you have
Rallies
a time machine.
at Foley Square, New York. Rally in New York at Foley Square.
What time?
Sorry, someone just texted to me, so I apologize. I wasn't trying to.
All right, Google
throw
it.
in.
Rally of Foley
Google it,
Square
guys.
in New York.
Google it.
Probably in a few hours.
See you, folks. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. The months drifted into years while I shifted